Hello again and welcome to Mental Health Matters, the show where we take a deep dive into everything mental health and well-being. I'm Dr. Audrey Tang, my co-host is Judith Crosier, and today's topic is online health. How healthy are you online?
Well, it's funny because I'm very tech savvy, but I don't think I'm very online savvy. I don't think I give it much thought, to be honest, which is really bad.
Yeah, this is a problem, isn't it? And I don't know whether any of you feel like this out there, but passwords, I know I use kind of the same one.
Otherwise, how do you remember?
Well, exactly. And then the other thing is my father-in-law, so he has different passwords, all completely difficult and not easy to guess, all written on one piece of paper. So all you need to do is steal the piece of paper and you're into everything. Yeah. So what do you do? If you've got any thoughts, please pop them in the comments. But what do you do? I mean...
I just have very similar passwords for everything, and I vary elements of it, and then I kind of just have to guess if I don't, or I save them so that the password comes up, but then that's not always safe. I mean, I've got my laptop out there, nobody can get in, I know, but I use it in a cafe. It's not 100% safe, is it?
Exactly. But this isn't the only issue we want to think about today, because it's not just people accessing our information, it's what then happens to it. Yeah. And a lot of the time, people seem to think that it is just about stealing our money. And yes, that is part of it. But it can also be about impersonating you to go and talk to other people, open other accounts, catfish even.
Get loans, which happened to me.
Really? Yeah. What happened?
I got correspondence from a bank saying, please sign the paperwork for your loan, which I hadn't applied for. So it happened, it happened. And I know how it happened, and I've put steps in place so that it won't happen again. But it's just so easy, and I had it just out of the blue.
Yeah. It's really, really
and it really
scary.
shakes you. It's very disconcerting.
It does, because it's not even finding out everything about you. It's knowing enough about you to actually cause you problems. So I had an incident once where I was called, it was about 8 o'clock on a Friday night. I was going on holiday the next day, so I was already really kind of stressed and everything. And it was someone saying they were my bank. They had half of my details, so enough to make you think, oh,
it's genuine.
It's genuine. Yeah. And the only reason I didn't give them my details is because I couldn't remember them.
Okay.
And we can't rely on our own incompetence to stay safe online. And then we've got other issues now. Certainly, I know we've both been in teaching, online bullying.
I mean, that was happening even back then when I was teaching and when you were teaching. Yeah. It was kind of just starting to become quite prevalent. Yes. And it's horrible, the effects on children, and it happens with adults. Yeah. It's awful.
And it's the problem with online bullying is that, okay, when I was in school, which was many, many, many years ago, as a school child, not a teacher, if I was bullied, it stopped at the gate because then you went home and it was okay.
Yeah, and you were safe at home.
Exactly. But now with phones, you are inviting people right into your bedroom. Yeah. And that's a hugely intimate space.
Yeah, and 24/7 as well. You can never get away from it.
Exactly. And then with things like Zoom and other online platforms, which we all had to use during the pandemic, you then end up with a situation where you are again inviting work colleagues and people into your space. Yeah. And that's why I used to laugh in the pandemic where people were doing Zoom calls in their pants and in their underwear. It was one of those urban myths, I think. I don't know how many people were doing it. Maybe you were, and that's okay. That's great. But for me, again, it was inviting people into the space which I wouldn't normally choose to share with my work colleagues.
No, of course.
So it's very intimate. I don't think we realise this. And then another thing, so we've got a great expert on today, but another issue that I have here to talk about online is when people are online, they write much ruder things than they would ever say to someone's face.
Oh, yes. The keyboard warriors.
Yes.
It's amazing how people either change or just that sort of darker side of their personality comes out. And they feel safe enough to do that because obviously there's no comeback to them. Yeah,
and there's anonymity as well to some degree. And in a way, it's quite funny because it's interesting. We have some amazing guests in here, but they're less comfortable doing television than they are compared to doing a podcast or radio, because you can see their faces.
Well, yes, it's more exposing, isn't it? That's true.
It really is.
It is.
Now, bear with me because I'm going to introduce our guest, who is fabulous. I am absolutely thrilled to have a recurring expert. We've had him on the show before. It's Danny Eastman from Cyber Fortified, and he is going to really crack down on our online health and safety. Danny, so great to have you with us again, and thank you so much for helping us last time you were on the show. Can we break down cyber health? And let's say, starting with passwords, because we said at the start of the show, I have the same password for most of my sites, and that's totally wrong, isn't it?
Well, firstly, it's lovely to be back on the show. Lovely to see you both. So yes, let's start with passwords. Very important topic within cyber health. So the same passwords. I'm not going to hold back, Audrey. Oh dear. The same passwords across multiple accounts. I think the reason is fairly obvious, but we'll still address this. If a cyber criminal gets hold of this password, you've essentially unlocked your entire online footprint or digital footprint, because they'll be able to access social media accounts, email accounts, and any other types of accounts. Banks are slightly different, but you do open yourself up quite a lot if you're using the same passwords. Now, I can't just have a little dig at Audrey without having a little dig at Judith, because I heard that somebody uses not just the same passwords, does a little tweak. Now, is that one step better? No, sorry, Judith, it's not.
I know.
And the simple reason is that cyber criminals will use scripts to guess alternate versions of the password. So even if you're saying Judith 1 and then Judith 2, for example, these scripts will anticipate those changes and those differences.
Okay.
So unfortunately, ladies, neither of those methods work.
Right. So we've been told, well and truly told, and I hope some of you have been
on the wrist.
as well. Danny, what would you suggest that we do instead? Because I don't think what my father-in-law does is the right thing either, which is change completely difficult passwords, but write them all down on one piece of paper.
So, unfortunately, my parents do the same thing, except I wouldn't say that their passwords were overly complicated. And I have spoken to them about this, because obviously, being in cybersecurity, it's a little embarrassing. So now, my parents' justification as well, they live in an apartment which has got a secure entry door. And so surely that's safer than perhaps using a password manager, or as Google Chrome have, they have a built-in password manager as well. Now, how do you argue with that logic? Because let's be honest, if nobody can get into your apartment or your home, and you've written down your passwords in such a way that it's not that obvious, then okay, there's an argument for it. Listen, not everybody's going to be able to remember passwords. Not everybody is going to be savvy enough to use password managers. So if that is their fallback, and that is making them comfortable, and they're able to then produce passwords that are effective, then great. It's better to do something than nothing. Saving them, for example, in an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document is absolutely just one big no.
Yeah.
Simple reason is, if a cyber criminal is able to access your computer, then again, they have access to a password list. Equally, when you save passwords in a browser, as historically as people used to do, without there being like a built-in password manager like Google Chrome has done. Again, if people are able to hijack the browser session, and that's about as technical as I want to get on that, but essentially they'll be able to access your passwords. Okay. So what can we do? Well, if you're tech savvy like Judith, you now have no excuse.
I don't.
I would say perhaps use a password manager. There are plenty of them on the market. The idea is that you create a secure vault. So you only need to remember one password, and you're going to want to make it a good one. And most password managers themselves will actually help you generate strong industry standard passwords. So for the absolute layman, this is just perfect. Okay. Now, I often get asked the question, but surely these password managers are not infallible. They don't guarantee safety. Well, you know what? Nothing does. Yeah. But it will give you a level of peace of mind that really, in the kind of frenetic, frantic, crazy digital world, yeah, you know what? That peace of mind is priceless. And so if you can get even a slice of it, then great.
That's really important to listen to because, I mean, I'm actually just shocked that my 70-plus-year-old father-in-law is more tech savvy than I am. And you got off lightly there. Because it's too easy to do. And I think that's a really good point about the password manager to then only have to remember one thing. Because it gets worse, doesn't it, than someone just stealing your finances and your access. They can impersonate you as well. And I know we touched on this at the start of the show. What happens when somebody gets access to be able to put themselves about online as you?
Well, it's an odd form of flattery, isn't it? But it's quite a destructive form of flattery. I think if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of look at it in the reverse of how to stop it or how to monitor that sort of thing.
Brilliant.
Because as we do know that, you know, someone who can impersonate you can take out bank loans, can potentially ruin your online reputation, especially if you're running a business, and cause trouble. You know, there's a multitude of outcomes there. But if we were to look at how to sort of keep your online presence safe, one of the greatest tools, by the way, from a financial point of view, is to register with one of the many credit agencies that are out there. I'm not naming them deliberately because we don't want to endorse necessarily, but there are credit agencies out there. The idea is you keep track who is looking you up, who is there a sudden change in your credit score? Because if there is, and you set up notifications, it means you can act straight away. Most people don't do this. So then they might go for a remortgage or a new mortgage, just as an example, and they're suddenly surprised by the fact that their credit score has completely nosedived. So I think one of the best ways is to firstly be careful about what you're putting online. Secondly, be a little bit more password savvy, but also keep track of what's going on. And nowadays, the sort of incidence of fake Facebook accounts, for example, is just, you know, it's inundated with friend requests from what are clearly fake profiles. So I think people are getting more savvy to that, and of course, it's really important to immediately to inform people. Another thing that people don't do, by the way, and in my line of work, I've had plenty of business owners come to me almost in tears saying, I've spent 3 years and tens of thousands of pounds building the Facebook page for the business, advertising and everything, and we've been locked out because of a hacker. Or people use their own personal Facebook pages, you know, perhaps as their own personal brand. So there are things you can do within Facebook, and again, I'm just focusing on Facebook because a lot of the platforms do have the same thing, and that is using something called multi-factor authentication. So Google has a great authenticator app, and you can download it from the Apple iStore. Is it called iStore? Apple App Store, I think it's called. That's it. And Google Play Store. You'd think I'd know the names. And you download, and you can, something like Facebook will give you, I think under settings and security and privacy, they will give you like a QR code which you scan with the authenticator app. Then they ask you to put in the one-time passcode, by the way, which resets every 60 seconds. So then authenticate the app, and then every time you might log in, you'll be asked for that one-time passcode. Because passwords are starting, well, not just starting actually, they've for some time now lost their strength. And that's why multi-factor authentication has been brought in. So where that is available, and generally speaking, it's available a lot, people should be using authenticator apps. And you know, and that's as I've used the phrase before, it's as standard as alloy wheels on a car.
Okay.
I love that.
And dare I say electric windows.
Yeah, it's also really helpful that you've mentioned this signing up to a credit agency, because I know I hear that and suddenly think, does this damage my credit score? Because every time I have had to go for a large purchase or something like that, they check my credit score and they will say to me, this will affect your credit score for a while. So does this signing up with that agency affect our credit score in that way?
Certainly not in a negative way.
Okay.
I've actually done that.
Oh!
So I have done that. I've done a good thing. I've been with one
There
for
you
a
go.
while. Yeah. So I kind of redeemed myself a little bit, but it's brilliant because it does tell you when someone's done a search.
Yeah.
And why.
Fabulous.
So, yeah.
And sorry, just one quick one, because I know we've got to go into our resident expert. Danny, when it comes to Facebook, and I'm glad you mentioned them, and passwords, because I want to finish this bit off on that, we have a situation where, you know, you play those games where it goes mother's maiden name, and you get your porn name, and you get your
I never do those.
Whatever name.
Yeah.
Those are problematic as well, aren't they? We mustn't play those, right?
Yes, they are incredibly problematic. And during the pandemic, there was a high volume of people finding out which character they were in Lord of the Rings, which Star Trek captain they were, porn names, whether they were going to be lucky this year, and the list goes on. So yes, please, as tempting as they are, as fun as they seem, please don't use those.
Hi, my name is Dr. Constance Leland, the host of Level Up Circle, where I elevate the world through education, one learner at a time. Join me on Fresh Takes, Thursdays at 9 a.m. PST, right here on E360 TV.
But Danny, when we are online, so much of our life is online, and that's why we spend so much time there. What else would you advise when it comes to a cyber security and cyber health check?
Okay, so I'll talk about it from a kind of a personal point of view, not so much from a business perspective. And that is, of course, you know, probably people like the three of us have probably overshared over the years before we started to realize we probably shouldn't. But that's okay. That's kind of in the past now. There's nothing we can do about it. Well, I say that, and really, if you Google your name, see what comes up. And you are allowed to request the removal of certain information online. You do have that right. And hopefully those platforms will acquiesce to the request. But in general, it's something as simple as common sense. And I know that last time we said that, and my God, does common sense elude us at probably the most critical times. And that's where we are fundamentally and horribly human, because we do that. But really and truly, it's like I said, common sense. Do not overshare. Lie, by the way, on your security net questions. Do not give us your actual maiden name. It's not that difficult to find out.
That's true.
Because chances are you've posted it somewhere.
Yeah. Yes, because it will be our original Facebook page and things like that.
I never thought about that.
Of course, yeah. And this is where common sense really isn't that common.
Yeah.
Well, do you know what the worst thing is, ladies? It's the fact that some people on their Facebook profiles, they'll say their name, and I'm sorry, ladies, it is the ladies that do this, and there is a reason why. They'll say their first name, their married name, and then they'll write Ni or Nay, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, and their maiden name. I'm like, why give so much information away? It's just, for me, it's lunacy. Forgive me for sounding so harsh, but we've got to stop doing that. Don't have your birth date on your profile visible to others. No, you know, those that matter will still message you on your birthday. Don't worry, okay? Also, the pages that you like, for example, again, on Facebook, you can hide that from everybody. It still means you get to see those pages, but why share that with the world? If I know that you like certain things, I can start to put together a profile about who you are, what your likes are, what you're likely to do. I mean, I don't need to tell you, Audrey, there is so much predictability about human behavior, and cyber criminals prey on that.
That's so important to remember, because that is exactly how people can then almost be too good to be true, because they like everything you like, they know practically everything about you. And it's funny you mentioned about the maiden name. The reason why, and I know people, because people have said so, is because they want their friends to find them. But of course it means that cyber criminals find us as well. So sticking with this, and I know this is a little bit of a curveball, Danny, a lot of people stay online actually because they feel safer online. They're not in big crowds, they're not out in the open where you don't know who might come up to you. But unfortunately, something like cyber stalking, you've kind of touched on it when it comes to knowing your likes and knowing a lot about you, that is a form of harassment. Do you mind telling us a little bit more about cyber stalking and the problems that can cause?
So you're quite right. Cyber stalking is essentially cyberbullying. It's intimidation as well. It's abusive. Hands down. That's if we're going to use one word on it, it's abusive. So look, when you share, when you post on a group, it's amazing. And to use the phrase that Judith mentioned earlier, you've got the keyboard warriors, or the trolls, as they're called, not the nice ones with the crazy hair. But something far more nasty. And, people start to attack you. So sometimes it's not even, it can be from something as innocent as commenting on your favorite pop star or TV star's post. And a case in point, I think it was some point last year, one of the, I don't know if you remember the show American Pickers. I think it's called American Pickers.
Yes.
And the main gentleman in it, he wrote something about following one of the unfortunate school shooting incidents in America. And I wrote something which I thought was fairly innocuous. And the abuse I received, telling me to politely go somewhere. And why was I speaking? Because I was British and we once occupied America. And various comments that I didn't take personally, but sometimes they can get quite personal. And even people who are on your friends list can get quite personal with you. Especially where religion is concerned, especially where politics is concerned. And boy, is there plenty of both around at the moment. So I think, the way I look at it is, if you are going to engage in any way, I think you have to be prepared also to receive replies. Sometimes they'll be nice, sometimes they really won't be. And it's an unfortunate side of the internet, and it's been an unfortunate side for many, many years. So I think, and by the way, just on the subject of cyberbullying, it is a crime.
Yes.
So if you are being continuously harassed and abused online, my advice would be to file a report with the police. The police have a great way of finding people, even if they try to remain anonymous or go by a pseudonym or any kind. The police have got a fantastic cybersecurity team. Certainly the Metropolitan Police have an incredible one. I can't speak for the other forces around the country, but I'm sure they will tap into the central computers anyway. But please, if you are being bullied online, please do report it to the police. And never ever feel, and I've said this before on the show, Audrey, never feel like maybe you're wrong, or maybe you don't want to trouble anyone. Please don't feel that way. Trouble someone, please. Trouble someone. It's really, really important.
Yeah, you've heard it from the expert there. It is important to speak up. Now, this may be a very silly question, Danny. We're speaking on webcam. Is it just in the movies that people can use your webcam? I'm looking at our webcam in the studio to access your house, or is there a modicum of truth to that?
Well, I'm glad you ladies have sat down. That's the first thing. I want to tell you right now that with the advent of smart doorbells, of course, anything that is connected to the internet can be hacked. And I've had a lot of colleagues who are in the AV arena who have said to me, sworn blindly that the products that they're installing are secure. The reality is, yes, they're probably secure, but listen, even CCTV cameras can be hacked.
Yeah.
Your Android phone, your iPhone, your cameras there can be hacked. With iPhone, it's slightly more difficult, but it's not impossible. And I'm sorry, Mac users, you just need to be reminded, just because once upon a time, Mac users were not the majority, or certainly not a noticeable percentage of computer users in the world, it does not mean that you are not target. MacBooks and any Mac device can still be hacked. It's just that cyber criminals go for the larger attack surfaces. And of course, that used to be Windows. Now, Mac products are a lot more popular. I mean, I think I own 3 Mac devices, 3 Apple devices, I should say. You know, an Apple Watch, an Apple phone, and an Apple iPad. So, you know, but I'm a Windows user, so make sense of that. So long gone are these kind of this perception that we're all safe. Nobody is entirely safe online. However, we can put protective measures in place. So with web cameras, so I can tell you what I do. So I have an external web camera. I know that when it's on, the blue light will come on. I can also use security software, depending on the security software you use. You can actually have it alert you to when the web camera has been turned on or is being used by an application. So, of course, you can confirm that. Webcam covers are a great idea. Again, just be vigilant. Just be vigilant. So I disable the onboard camera, and then I unplug the external web camera. Now, does that mean that a cyber criminal who's very, very savvy at the back end can't turn or re-enable the onboard camera? Yes, they can. But again, these are preventative measures.
I didn't even know that.
Cyber criminals want to go in and they want to come out very quickly. They do not want to hang around.
Sorry to interrupt, but
Make it difficult.
yeah, I had no idea that webcams could be hacked. No idea.
I think everything can be hacked. It's just the ease at which you're saying it can be done that's really, really frightening.
It is, yeah.
You know? And just sort of on that, it's a bit like we have all of these things because we think we're safe, but we don't really take the trouble to read about them or understand them. That's why it's so helpful to have somebody like yourself on. And Danny is going to be staying with us because he's going to give us his top tips for business. But we also went outside, got into nature as well. So this is a bit of a balance between on-screen and off-screen time. And I'll come over and tell you about that. We got to go out on GoBoat in Paddington, and these are electric boats which take you all the way around the canals, and you can self-drive them yourself. Again, it's another great way of getting out in nature and hanging around with people in real life.
Hi, I'm on GoBoat. This is no way there. I need to take photos or something. Go for the boat!
I'd like to focus on 2 things today. People feel that nature and the wild environment in which we're sharing this planet are different to humanity. And I think it's really important we remember that humanity is part of nature. We may be very able to influence it through our actions and our technology and our agriculture, but actually we are part of the nature on this planet, whether we like it or not, and we need to remember that. Secondly, climate change is really scary. When you think about the fact that we're fed this through the media and our kids are fed it at school, climate change is scary, and I guess people have created their own coping strategies to say, oh, it's not my problem, or someone's going to come in with some amazing silver bullet solution that's going to solve this. If we're going to get through this together as a species, what we need to do is everyone needs to play their own little part. It might be shopping locally, or it might be not driving quite as much. It might be planting seasonal flowers in your garden for pollinators and insects and birds. It might be lobbying your local MP to stop something from happening, or for making something happen. And I understand that the lobbying isn't for everyone. Someone also needs to make a cup of tea for the guy that goes and does that job. So I think there are many lanes that we need to move in, but we just need to make sure that we're moving in something, because every tiny little bit that we do makes a difference.
So probably the best tips I can give, and I guess some of this is sort of geared towards the more small to medium sized businesses. We've already spoken about it: strong passwords and using multi-factor authentication. So if you're using things like Office 365, they have their own authenticator at Microsoft. And again, with any other platforms, you might use financial platforms, any kind of CRM platforms, again, using their multi-factor authentication. Pretty much most platforms, if not all platforms, are utilizing this extra level of security, or I should say extra layer of security. Another thing, people don't tend to update their software, and they're either reliant on their IT teams or a third-party IT company, but this is something that should occur regularly. So best practice is to implement an update within 14 days of that release. Windows 10 and Windows 11 tend to take care of a lot of the heavy lifting, but your individual software, you need to sort of stay on top of that. Firewalls, as much as they probably don't do as much as they used to, they're still quite an important part of your layered approach to security. Most security software will have built-in firewalls as well. Windows has its own built-in firewall. I believe Apple as well on the MacBook. But I would always avoid products that claim to be an antivirus protection suite. We want to sort of go to a higher level now. We need to be looking for things that say anti-malware, anti-spyware, even anti-ransomware. You might have to pay a bit more for that, but that's equally important. Practicing safe browsing habits. What that basically means is, social engineering comes in the form of phishing emails. And these emails will coerce you in one way or the other to click on a link. So we have to be very careful about that. Additionally, only visiting friendly websites. And what do I mean by friendly websites? Well, websites that are known. Even, by the way, mistyping an address to a common website can take you to what looks like a legitimate website, but it's in fact an unsafe version of the website with no affiliation to the company themselves. We've seen copycat websites of eBay, Amazon, just to name a few, well, two. And the other thing is to utilize cloud storage solutions. And the simple reason is maintaining an on-premises server is expensive, and chances are you do not have the capital to implement the type of security that you really need to. So you know what? Let the cloud companies, again, do the heavy lifting, and you can save yourself a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of stress. So that's our top 5 tips for small to medium businesses. And I'm going to sign off now, ladies, with this. Be cyber wary, be cyber ready.
Well, I'm embarrassed.
I feel thoroughly told off.
So do I.
Right, no, it's only Danny, but yeah, I take all of that on board.
I know, and there's so much to take on board as well, because there's so much that, because I'm not that tech savvy, I almost think somebody else is dealing with it for me. And actually, that places a lot of trust into a body that I don't necessarily know.
So let's talk about shame. Now, a feeling of shame is, well, it's expected after really any type of scam, but in particular a romance scam, because people who have been victims of these sorts of scams often have given some very personal information away, and they've shared some moments that have felt incredibly intimate. Now, with shame, what happens is that it tends to close us down, and we don't then discuss our experiences with other people, and that leads to sometimes quite severe isolation. But when we're trying to deal with shame, one of the very best things to do is to talk to other people, because being victim of a scam is actually quite common. And when we know that we're not the only one, when we're not alone in our experience, it can help to start to just allow those feelings of shame to melt away. Now, research shows that people who believe they'll never be scammed are actually more likely to be scammed than others. So that shows us something about the mindset around this type of issue. So if we're sort of open to possibilities that this can happen to anyone, including ourselves, then again, that allows us to normalize some of this experience, and that will again allow shame to dissipate in that way. So what I would say is that if you're feeling a sense of shame, your gut reaction will often be to close up, to close down, but to try and do the opposite, to talk to someone about it that you trust, or it could be a professional, to really be able to work through those feelings of shame, and to know that scammers out there, this is their job, this is what they do 9 to 5 every day. They are very, very good at it, and they develop new techniques all the time, and it can really happen to any one of us. Now, shame can be incredibly difficult in terms of working through this very uncomfortable emotion, because often it's confused with guilt. And with guilt, it's when we have a response to something that we have done wrong. But shame is really where we haven't done anything wrong per se. Often something's been done to us. So first of all, when thinking about shame, to be able to separate, as it were, whether there is some responsibility here for your actions, or whether there is a perpetuator out there, like a scammer, who knows exactly what they're doing, is very, very good at it, and is targeting people in such a way to really draw them in, particularly with a romance scam. Now, I have personal experience of romance scams because my mother, a few years ago, she was a victim of this type of crime, and she was an older lady, and to be fair, she was a bit lonely. And scammers can pick up on this. They use social media. They really, with quite a fine-tooth comb, target individuals and use some very, very sneaky and manipulative types of practices to gradually build trust. And again, it's that gradual, insidious nature of romance scams that draw people in such a way. But actually, my mum, she didn't do anything wrong. She thought she was building a relationship with someone, and it was incredibly heartbreaking when she found out that it was a scam. So as a family, we were there to support her, and certainly not to make her feel any worse than she already did about interacting with someone who was a scammer. So yes, when we're thinking about shame, to really separate out feelings of shame, those very intense feelings from feelings that you've done something wrong. And that can be helpful in moving forward and away from shame.
In today's Business Boost, I thought I would give you a few tips to work on your posture and work on your overall well-being when you're stuck in front of a computer all day. One of the interesting things is people think they've got really good posture. So if you just want to try this now, stand up. Just stand up. And what I'd like you to do is just simply stand and see which way your thumbs are facing. Now, I know you can't quite see my thumbs at the bottom of the screen here, but they are slightly turned in. They're slightly turned in like this. That is actually not great posture. Why? Because if I turn to the side, you'll be able to see it. I'm actually hunched over. But if I simply turn my thumbs from facing in round to the front, so that's all I'm going to do is move my thumbs round to the front, you can suddenly see my posture has changed. And that is the difference between thumbs in, thumbs facing the front. And the problem and the reason why I bring this to your attention is because we tend to think, oh, I've got great posture. And looking at me face on, you'd actually think, yeah, that's working. But as I say, turn to the side and you'll see this is actually how I'm sitting, generally thinking I'm sitting up straight, and I'm not. Just rolling your shoulders and thinking about bringing your thumbs forward, really, really helpful. So do that little posture check every so often, because the whole thing when it comes to sitting in front of a computer, and not just our computer, but these lovely little things that we've been talking about recently, is we're doing this the whole time. And not only is our head about 12 pounds of body weight anyway, but it adds a further 12 pounds if we're down like this onto the back of our necks. And so if we don't want to be hunched over the whole time, or we don't want to have to wear a harness or something like that to get our posture better, then we just need to make sure our thumbs are facing forwards when we think we're standing up straight. Just do that little double check. And a second piece of research I wanted to talk about is blinking. Most of us don't actually blink correctly. If I take my glasses off and you just simply blink, my optometrist has told me I don't actually shut my eyes fully when I do blink. And this may be happening to a lot of you. And because I've got dry eyes anyway, this is really problematic. So if you simply do 20 proper blinks, I know you're going to feel silly, but it at least means you're moisturizing your eyes just that tiny bit. So I know these were slightly unusual tips when it comes to today's Business Boost, but we do spend so long over our desks in a hunched up position, over our phones also in a hunched up position, and certainly staring at a screen, that if you're thinking about overall health and well-being, those two tips, good posture and making sure we blink properly, are going to be helpful for our overall sense of wellness.
Hello lovely viewers and welcome. My name is Sharon Lawton, a professionally accredited life coach and mentor, and it is my pleasure to share these next few minutes with you. So today we're going to be exploring the magic of critical thinking, something that goes beyond all other areas and really can make a huge difference to our lives. So grab a pen, a notebook, or even a cup of tea, and let's get started. So habit number 1 is question assumptions. Now, it's important to question our assumptions, particularly when the stakes are high. Habit number 2 is seek diverse opinions. Now, when we seek diverse opinions, it gives us a broader perspective of what's going on. So ask questions, get opinions, share the concept with as many different people as you can. And this will enable you to reflect on their different viewpoints of that particular decision. Habit number 3 is reflective thinking. Once you've collected those diverse opinions and perspectives, set yourself some time just to reflect and think about all of the different opinions that you've collected. So remember, this type of approach really helps you to ensure that you are not making those knee-jerk reactions and knee-jerk decisions. So important when the stakes are high. So I hope those tips were useful. Thank you for spending your time with me today and reflecting on some different approaches, because you then hold the power to shape your story and your life.
So, key things, key takeaways from today. What are yours?
Change all my passwords.
Yes.
Change them all. The only reason I remembered the Zoom one was because it's the version of the same one. So yeah, and so it's handy, but now I know why it's really not a good idea, and I have to be much more aware of things.
Yeah. Now I was really interested that you were saying that you joined that credit agency check.
Yeah.
Is that free to do?
Yes. Yeah. And then I get emails to say, oh, you know, brilliant, your credit is really healthy at the moment, but it also does alert me to when there's been a check, and I can go in, and it might be, they might have done a check for something that I haven't even realised that there would be a credit check for. So it's really handy because I think, oh no, I didn't ask for that check, but I go in and I think, oh yes, it was that. But if there was something where somebody was applying in my name, then it would alert me before anything happened and I needed to worry about it.
Yeah, that's something that I'm going to start doing because I think that's really helpful. And if you found any of those tips helpful, or maybe it's changed your behaviour, do let us know in the comments. The last thing that it was Danny's point about it is abusive online.
Yes.
It's the idea that people are sitting there just waiting to be mean.
That's how it feels, doesn't it? It's almost like people want an excuse to say horrible things.
Yeah.
And I mean, it happened to me, and it was horrible in my village Facebook group. And I think it's something you're sensitive to if you've got animals or children, or even an adult that's very sensitive to loud noises. It's the fireworks. Yeah. So not firework night, I can understand that, but using fireworks to... I know what it was. It was the Thursday night NHS clap every Thursday, fireworks. And my dog would be absolutely petrified. So I wrote something on there, can we use something else? Or people have clocks in their house. They know when it's 8 o'clock. And the abuse. And I had to leave the group for about 2 years. It was awful.
That's exactly what Danny was saying.
Yeah.
Something innocuous
Yeah.
you feel is innocuous, and probably said politely as well.
Well, yes, I did. But other people weren't polite, and it was really horrible. And people were saying very personal things about... People didn't know me, but they were saying really personal things about me and my... my household, and it was horrible. Really horrible.
This is it. So watch your online behaviour. Really think about your behaviour online, not just in terms of your own security, but also in terms of how it might affect others. That's all we've got time for. I'm going to now go change all my passwords and join a credit agency. Stay healthy and have a great week.